Hi, Joe Cerrone. I'm going to show how to model this lab using Solidworks. It's basically a sign that's 128 millimeters by 55 millimeters. It's got this large radius on the top, and the dimensions are just a little bit off for this to be right. This should be 56 millimeters based on if this is a 15-inch radius, and then we have a 13-inch radius for this. That would give us 28, and half of 28 would be, or double that would be 56. So I'm going to make it slightly wider. The base of the do not disturb sign is 3 millimeters, and then the letters protrude 2 millimeters up. There's some basic CAD work right over here that kind of shows how that looks. Draw a rectangle, and I would put everything on the initial layer and just extrude it from there. So that's what I'm going to do. So we'll start a new part. We'll get rid of the swatch. We'll go over to millimeters. We'll go to sketch. Start a new sketch on the front plane. And we'll start by just drawing a line 128 approximately. By 56. And you just eyeball it when you're working with SolidWorks sketches. When we add the dimensions, it will then be fully constrained. And so we'll say 128 by 56. And then we'll put a 13-inch radius, 13 millimeter. See if it'll do it. That would be 26. Let's do it again. Perfect. And then we'll add a 15 millimeter radius to the center of that. And I'm surprised I have a little bit of a flat spot, but we'll work with that. So I'm going to drive a center line down the middle. And then I'm going to draw another center line through these 2 points. And I'll draw a circle right at the intersection. And it'll be a 15-inch radius. And then we'll draw a line. We'll wake up this point right here, horizontal to here, hit escape, and we'll offset that 15 millimeters. I will trim. And I'm not sure, I'm going to have to delete that. There we go. And I might put a little radius on this edge here just so that it has just a little something. Let's put a 2 millimeter, something to soften up the edges so that when it goes on the doorknob, there we go. Great. All right. We're going to extrude this 3 millimeters. So we'll green check mark that. As far as being fully defined for all of this components here, at this point we're not going to worry about that. So we're going to say features, extrude boss base, and we're going to extrude that 3 millimeters. And then we'll green check mark it. And then to put on the text for this exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this surface and say Sketch, spacebar, normal to, and then we'll create the text. And so in the Sketch tab, there's a text, and what we do is we start with a center line that'll be used to locate the text. And so once we have that center line on there, we can then go to text, and this is the curve that it's looking for. So we could select that, and then as far as the text goes, we could say, I think I was, instead of doing what it said, SSST, which I think was supposed to be SSH, we're going to say video conference. And we're going to take that and make that a little bigger. And so what we can do is we can get rid of this use document font, and then we can increase this a little wider, a little taller. Maybe not so wide. I'm afraid it's really not quite big enough. So let me go down to 100%, and then let's look at a different font. And so let's go to 100% on that font. And you want to choose something that's bold and that has sort of an open shape. Something like this chiller would be difficult to 3D print. This might look good. This comic. Cooper. Let's look at that. And so we'll say 12, black opaque angle. Let's go with that. And then on the height side, let's say 4. And I think we can say, we'll just put this on a separate line, and then we'll bump that up a little taller. So we'll say 6 millimeters. And then we can then take this, highlight it, make it centered, hit enter, put the next line, almost. So let's dial it down to 5. There we go. All right, and so that's our sign. And then I'm going to add a little logo to that. And so I'll put my initials on there so that when we print these, we know whose they are. Let's just put it down here in the lower left-hand corner. Hit escape. And I'll go with text. And I'll say this is my curve. And I'll put my initials on there. And I'm going to make this a little smaller. Good enough. And then what we're going to do is we're going to extrude this a height of 2 millimeters. So we'll say Features, Extrude Boss Base. And you can see it's kind of caught the letters. If you change the angle of it, you can start to see that it's going to extrude that. We're going to say 2 millimeters. and then we'll green check mark it. All right, we can change the color on that if we decide to. So we'll go over here to the beach ball, and then we'll say we'll make the boss extrude purple, and we'll leave the rest gray. We'll save the part, file, save as, save it as your initials, -lab2. And we'll put that in our 3D printing directory. And we'll also save one more version of it as an STL. Save as. So that's going to be our stereolithography file that we'll use to slice it in the DigiSlicer for 3D printing. Yes. And that completes this exercise using SolidWorks.